Hey everybody, it's Stacy Hyland of Hyland Coaching, and I'm so excited today to have Andrea Liebross with us because she is one of my clients that I absolutely love, and she has just released into the world an exciting thing. Her new book, which I have actually the pre-copy here. I have the copy on my Kindle. I have the physical
The real
version coming
thing.
to
Here's
me.
the real
The
thing. Yes.
author of She Thinks Big. So, you know, let me tell you a little bit about Andrea. She's a coach, she's a speaker, she's a host of the Time to Level Up podcast, which is absolutely excellent to listen into. And she helps high achieving entrepreneurial women make the shift from overwhelm to freedom in both their life and their business. So, she's very much in alignment with my strategy of, like adding a zero without the hustle, like having it all and not sacrificing your life as well. So I'm really excited because she's going to share with us some of the insider things from the book, which is She Thinks Big. I have the pre-copy here. Has a much prettier cover in real life. I can't wait to get my hardcover copy. But welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today.
I am thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, like, we've been working together for a few years. We've done one-on-one coaching. You're in the mastermind, and I've seen the kind of results that you get with your clients. And so tell me a little bit about like when people well, let's back it up a step. So how let's back it up a step of how you got started in coaching, because I think that that'll be really cool for people to see. And then we'll talk a little bit about your clients and what they're up to.
Okay. So actually, if I think about it, how I got started in coaching is because I was seeing too many people think small and not big. Um, Way back in the day, I worked for a company where I was recruiting and hiring and training new entrepreneurs. They kind of were almost opening franchises, if we want to call it that. It was a little different, but let's give that model in your head. And what happened is people got into it. They're like, yes, I am fully invested. I am committed. And then as they started to create a profit and things got really rolling, they it got hard and they didn't necessarily know how to push through that, and they started to feel defeated and definitely overwhelmed and questioned, should they be doing this or what do they need to be doing differently, and this wasn't going exactly as how they wanted it to go. And so really in that moment what I was doing was coaching them through what I now call the messy middle, and
Mm.
pushing them and helping them, not really pushing them, but I'm going to call it guiding them to shift their mindset, because I really saw that in order to get through that spot, it was two things. It was systems. They had to upgrade their systems because how they started wasn't going to work now. And more importantly, like 80% of it was that they had to shift their or change their mindset, because they needed to move into that bigger thinking. Like what kind when with that comes uncomfortableness, and it's hard, and you really don't want to do that.
Right. No, it kind of cracks me up because a lot of times people talk about systems, but they don't talk about mindset at the same time, or they talk about mindset, but they don't talk about the system. So it's like, it's great if you have systems, but if you don't have the mindset for when things get hard, then you're not going to use the systems. And that's really frustrating because you've invested the time and the money into the systems and then they don't
Yes,
work. Or people on the other hand are talking about, oh, I'm going to have a great mindset, but they don't have anything to put into action. So it's like the
right.
marriage of the two together that is like the really juicy magic that comes with that. So,
That's the secret sauce.
yes, the secret sauce. So tell me, so when your clients come to you, what are they struggling with? Because I've seen like on the other side of like the things that you're doing with them, but give me an example because you work with high achievers, so they're not just sitting on their butts.
They are not sitting on their butts. No one is sitting on their butts, that's for sure. But sometimes they do feel like they're spinning their wheels. Okay, like they're
Ah,
they're
okay.
they're doing things. Okay, a lot of them are like, I feel like I've been working so hard, but I'm not getting anywhere. There's that, and there's also the other that comes just like, tell me what to do. I'm really good at following instructions. Okay, so there's those two components. So what this kind of looks like is almost them getting in their own way, like they're the bottleneck. So an example of one client, who's 10x her income and
Wow.
impact both in about 2 years' time, was that when she came to me, she was just truly just a solopreneur. She was customer service, she was sales, she was marketing, she was the actual distributor of service. Okay, so she was playing all the roles. And in order for her to go where she wanted to go, and I'm not even talking where she wants to go now. We're just talking next step. She really needed more time. She needed more money and she needed more energy. And I would say, and she needed more better relationships. So those are your four most valuable resources. So she had to kind of figure out, how do we get those? And really the simplest way to think about this is that you need to bring people onto your team. You need to hire people.
Mm-hmm.
But that brings up some fear. What if it's the wrong person? I'm going to have to, what if they don't know what they're doing? How do I even hire someone? So all of these steps along the way, require you to go do something that you probably haven't done before. And that requires you to think about who you want to be in the future. So she wants to be someone who's really delivering the service. She doesn't want to be doing all of the back end stuff. And she had to imagine herself as that person with someone else doing all of the back end in order to kind of get through the hurdles of hiring and bringing people on. So once she kind of did that, then things started to take off. And now she's got different issues, but in the beginning, that's where it was.
Yeah. And so, like the people that you work with are high achievers. So they have they have an idea of something else is possible
Oh
in their
yeah,
head.
100%.
What do
Most of
you
them.
what do you think are the most common types of fears that are stopping them from actually going after that bigger thing that they have that inkling in their head
Yep.
they can do?
I think money. Okay, can I afford this? That's the common phrase. Can I afford this? And I always say you have to kind of make this decision from someone who can afford it, because that's where we're going, to someone that can afford it. Okay, so you have to go to that future you. So number one is, can I afford it? Number two is how much time am I going to have to put into this? And not even into themselves, like into these other people or other resources. What's it going to take from me? What's it going to steal from me? So that kind of gets through them. And none of this is like, can I do it? It's kind of like, if I do it, will the money be there? Will the time be there? Will the energy be there? Because they also want to spend time with their families. And, really why they got into entrepreneurship, or one of the reasons, is because they don't want to have a boss. They want to be able to do what they want to do. So none of this is almost, can I do it? Like deep down, they all know they're capable. So I don't even like the word capable, but it's all of these what if kind of questions that get in the way.
Yeah, it's interesting how we can I talk a lot about affirmations, like asking the kind of questions that you want, right? The book by Noah St. John. And like that what if question is really, they say there's no bad questions, but it's almost a disempowering question when you're like, what if this? And it seems like that word what if, it's always followed by all the negative things, right?
It
Like,
is.
what if I don't have enough money to pay this person? What if this person steals all my login codes? What if, what if I can't go to my kid's baseball game? Like, I find that people are not doing like, well, what if I hire this person and they're better than me? And
Yes.
I'm like, I can release all of these things and have free time. So I think it's like, how can you make the question an empowering one instead of a negative one that most people are stuck in?
It's true, because if you're making it a negative one, like what if I can't afford this? Okay, what your brain's taking in there, like the internal communication that's going on, is you can't afford this.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's like you're creating, I like to say, yeah, you need an action plan, a time plan, but you also need a belief plan. But if you're asking these what if questions that have a negative feeling to them, then your belief plan is filled with beliefs that aren't going to help you.
Right,
They're
right. Oh, well,
stories.
I love the idea of a belief plan. So let's dig into that a little bit and tell us what that looks. That sounds so exciting, because I think
It's
in order to do the next version of yourself, you have to believe it's possible. So
yeah.
how do you help people craft a belief plan?
So I think the first thing they have to realize is that they have what I call thought options. Okay. So thought options, like what we think is a choice. I know sometimes it doesn't feel like that, but it is a choice. So you've got thought options. And my analogy to this is that you're at a wedding and there's a waiter walking around and it's in person. And he says, he's got a tray of hors d'oeuvres and he comes up to you and he says, "Hey, Stacy, take one." And you look down at this tray and you're like, which should I have? Should I have a shrimp cocktail? Should I have bruschetta? What should I have? So that tray, it's like a tray of thoughts instead of hors d'oeuvres, and you get to choose. So if you're going to create this belief plan, you have to be choosing thoughts that serve you or that are useful. So that's kind of the first piece of the belief plan. Because beliefs are thoughts, and thoughts
Mhm.
then fuel how you feel. Okay. So how you feel, and it doesn't all have to, this is the other thing, it doesn't all have to be positive. Okay. So this isn't like a positive negative. It's like a negative versus everything else. If you're in neutral, that's still going to serve you. Yes, if you're in positive, totally going to serve you, but you don't have to go to the whole other extreme. You just have to create some thoughts that keep you calm, cool, and collected and confident and kind of
Mm.
focused and on track,
Right. So it's
committed
not
to where you're
creating some
going.
belief that's way up here that feels
No,
too far. It's
no.
about like not being in that negative one that's pulling you backwards or holding you back.
Yeah, you just have to be in a place where you can like, what's the next best step? That's all I need to know. I don't need to like go far, far into the never land.
Yeah.
So I think that the first thing is realizing you have thought options, recognizing that thoughts are really just thoughts. They're not facts.
Mm.
Okay. Because then we start to integrate the facts with the thoughts, or fact and fiction, or facts and stories. And I'm all about stories, but you need to tell yourself stories that are going to help you move you forward. Um,
Yeah.
all right. So if you get your thoughts all, let's say you understand that you have thought options and you are choosing thoughts that serve you. If they serve you, they're creating this feeling that's going to help trigger or drive an action that again moves you towards your results. So the second thing I always say to people is what's the real problem here? Like, why are we in this place? Like, what's the real problem? And the real problem, 99% of the time, is just that you don't want to experience a negative feeling.
Ooh.
Like, there is no problem.
That is so good. Like you don't want to feel that feeling.
Yeah. So, like, this person who now, 2 years later, has like 10x her business. Okay. Where she was kind of stuck, the bottleneck, there wasn't a problem. Like, nothing had gone wrong. I mean, everything's moving right along. The problem was that she didn't want to experience this kind of negative, uneasy, uncomfortable feeling to get to that next level. That was the only problem. It wasn't about money. It really wasn't about time. It wasn't about how much energy she had. It was just that this was all going to be new and different. And that felt like problematic. That didn't feel good.
And our brains just go off, right? Like
Oh, yeah. I mean, my brain, I've had to reel it in.
she's just getting that boxer out and boxing.
I know, like, reel it in. Let's get yourself together. So and it's hard to do. Okay, so here's the other thing. It's really hard to do for yourself. Like, this is hard work. It's not easy because we're human and we're supposed to feel all these emotions actually. Really.
Well, they
Okay.
do, the emotions keep us safe and the fears keep us safe
Yes.
when it was like, "Oh, is that a tiger outside the cave?" Right?
Right.
But
Right.
now there's not a tiger outside the cave, although I did
No.
see a bear on our road this week, 2 of them.
Okay.
But
Okay.
but, like, it's not your brain is trying to keep you safe, but
Yeah,
in this world that we're in right now, it's like, it's safe to, like, go beyond that scared feeling and
it
try
totally
something
is.
new.
It totally is. So you got to go beyond that. And then when you do go beyond that, here's something that happens. Here's kind of like the third thing that I think people need to have in order to move into that bigger thinking or next level. And I've seen this too with my most successful clients is they have to start to embrace ambiguity or be okay with uncertainty. Like,
Mm.
we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen today. or tomorrow or a year from now. We don't know. And you have to be okay with that. Because if you're not, then you're just going to be staying in that same place. You're just going to be staying in that same place.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think Robert Allen, who wrote a lot of wealth books, he did the 1 Minute Millionaire with Mark Victor Hansen, who I had done the book launch with. He always used to say, like, people think security is a job, right? And they see entrepreneurship as not secure. But he's like, actually, a job is not secure because they could let you go tomorrow at lunch
Right.
or today at 4:30. Like, you have no idea what's going to
No.
happen with the budget cuts and all this. And so, like, if you choose security, you're choosing wrong because it's not secure. And I think that's where our brains are trying to keep us safe, because our society has programmed us, right, to think
Yes.
that, a job is safe, even like, before we were born, like, women couldn't even, well, since we were born, women couldn't even get a credit card or buy something on
Right.
their own or have a loan in the 70s, which is just crazy to think of.
Crazy.
So there's all of these cultural things to say, like, don't think big, don't take big action. And your thoughts are like, oh, see, look at all this data that's saying, yeah, stay small, stay small, stay small. And you're saying, no, look at this beautiful plate of appetizers, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
choose one. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about um, the messy middle. So you've chosen something, like you've now said, like, okay, I want this. I want to have a bigger company. I want to have a product launch. You want to launch a book, whatever it is. What's that messy middle that you talk about, and how do we get beyond that?
So I think the messy middle is, you've got your belief plan. Okay. So you've got your belief plan. You have a desire to do something. You start to take some action. Okay. You take the action on it. And then the unexpected, the things happen. Right. And so that is really where the messy middle starts. There's a start to the messy middle, is when the unexpected things happen, or it's not going like you thought, or you find yourself thinking, like, I don't have enough knowledge to do
Mm,
this. Okay, like, I don't know how. I've never done this before, right? You usually start to fall into what I call passive action when you're in the
okay.
messy middle. Okay, so you were taking action, you saw some momentum, and now you're taking actions, but there's no momentum. You're not getting where you want to go fast enough, but you still feel like you're on that hamster wheel. Okay, so
Mm,
what's going on is passive action. It's like behind the scenes. So you're listening to podcasts, which I'm all about that, but still, you're listening to podcasts, but you're not doing anything with it. Okay, you're reading books. Clearly, I like books. But again, are you actually implementing what's in the book?
right.
You're seeking advice. And again, I'm all about seeking advice, but are you then flipping the switch and putting and doing something with that advice? So you're kind of consuming. Usually the messy middle includes a lot of consuming, okay,
Mm,
but not much creating of the money, the time, the energy,
right. Right. One of my
right?
coaches, like 20 years ago, he used to call it the BS funnel, right? Instead of a
Yeah.
marketing funnel or sales funnel, he'd be like, it's a BS funnel where you're constantly tweaking things,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So it's like you're consuming things, you're tweaking things, but you're not actually releasing it. Like, you might be doing your website, but it's
Right.
never like updated and released. It's just like you're constantly never good
Yes.
enough.
Yes. Like updating your website is total passive action. Again, like, it has to be done and it's a good thing for your business, but the website itself is not going to sell the clients.
Right.
I mean, it assists in doing that, but there's more to it
Right,
than just
because if
that.
nobody then sees the website, or you don't put
Right.
yourself out there and show them where to go, then
Yeah.
nothing
And
happens.
you get stuck in what I call low value cycles. So sometimes I think about this low value cycle versus high value cycle. So I like to picture a clock, and you're at the top, and okay, let's say we're talking about the website. All right, so you create a website, you do put it out in the world, okay, but then someone comments that they don't like the colors. Okay. And you're like, okay, so you've gone now from 12 to 3 o'clock. And at 3 o'clock, you're assessing what's going on and you've gotten some color comments. Okay. So what you do is that if you're in a low value cycle, you throw it all out the window and you start again. Okay. It's almost like I always like draw this arrow, like from 3 o'clock, like out of the circle for low value cycles. But high value cycles, you'd be like, okay, someone didn't like the colors. I have two choices. I can say I don't care because I like them, or I could just change it slightly. I don't have to throw the whole website out the window, and then I can move on. All right. So then you're like, all right, I'm just going to make one change and move on. And you put it back out there, the same website, which is one little thing different. And you go from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock. And when you get to 6 o'clock, you assess again. And maybe you do hone it. Maybe you make it a little better, but you don't throw it out the window. You keep going to 9. So this is like a high value cycle versus getting caught in a low value cycle where I hear people say, well, this isn't working. This isn't working. And they toss it out the window.
Right. Right. So the high value cycle sounds a lot like optimizing, right? Like
It does.
actually
It does
taking something and moving forward with it. So it's interesting because you're talking about that 3 o'clock and the 9 o'clock and moving to the high value cycle. It sounds like there's an element of confidence in there because if I'm taking input and I'm like, ooh, they're speaking to the negative beliefs I have in my head, I could choose to accept whatever somebody's saying as truth.
Right.
Right. And that thought is like, oh, yeah, she's right. My website looks like crap. The colors are stupid, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
Versus if somebody's in that high value cycle, she's like, okay, is this somebody I respect? Number one, is this somebody that, like if it was your coach that said, I don't really like the colors, I don't think it looks professional, then that might be one thing. But if it's, somebody that from 8th grade that, never did anything with their life telling you that.
Yeah.
It's a different thing.
I like to say, like, what would you do? I like to say, what would you do regardless of time, money, or what anyone else says? What would be the decision you would make if what time, money, or what anyone else says didn't matter?
That is a power question. That's a writer downer.
Yeah. And usually you'd be like, I would just keep going. Like, I don't care what they think about the website or whatever. Right. But if you can't get to that place and you get stuck, well, I do care all about what other people think. Then it's then you're back to square one. And you're spinning your wheels and you're stuck in that messy middle. It's like you're stuck on that, it's messy in there and it gets messier because then you try something else. Okay. So then you try something else. You're like, well, I'm not going to work on the website anymore. I'm going to really be on social media 24 hours a day. All right. I'm going to do that. That's going to be my solution.
So let me ask you this. So how do you get out of that messy middle without like going for a new like direction? Like how
you have to kind of think like what's like there have to be some things that are working. Like what is working? Okay. Well, maybe people are getting to the website, but they're clicking off of it. So it's not, then what do we need to change on there? You have to kind of assess like what is working and how do I use that as fuel to move forward. Right. And the way to another way to do that fuel to move forward or get out of that messy middle is I always say, go ask your future you.
Oh, I like that. Okay.
Okay. So the future you is someone in the future, a year, 3 years, 5 years, who has achieved whatever you're setting out to achieve, you high achiever, who has created whatever they want to create, who's been there. And you ask that person, like, hey, what should I do today? Should I worry about these colors or should I just keep going? And that future you always has the answer. The past you does not. And the present you usually doesn't because your present you's too worried about staying safe. Right. What people are thinking. But future you who has seen results and feels the ultimate version of confidence, that future you always has the answer.
So let me ask you this. So, people that you work with, they're like you're Ivy League, Dartmouth woman. You have like very like there's a process, right? And like
Yep.
people a lot of times think like, okay, that's a little woo woo. How do I ask my future? You
I
know what I
know
mean?
it.
Like if
Isn't it
people see
sound all
things in
woo
black
woo?
and white, how do you get through that with somebody that's a high achiever that's like, that sounds a little woo woo, Andrea. How do I ask my future self if I am right here and I don't know right here? So what would you
Okay,
say to those
so I did this
doubting people?
yesterday, or I did this whatever day it was, Friday. Okay, so business owner, totally successful business. Like they had 83% profit last year.
Wow, that's amazing.
Okay, I was like, that's pretty good. 83% profit. Anyway, they want to get to that next level. So I asked them, where do you want to be in 5 years? And they gave me some very rational, realistic answer. Well, let's just times things by 5. And okay. And I said, no. I said, no, let's really, like, if I had a magic wand, where do you want to be? Well, now they're talking. They're like, we're going to live on a lake. We're going to work 3 days a week. We're going to have a whole leadership team. We really love doing live events. We're going to do more of those. We're going to get a lot of other people do all of the video stuff. We're going to hire on more like people to actually demonstrate what they do. They're not going to be doing it all themselves. I was like, okay. And they got all excited and you could feel the excitement. All right. So now let's get to today. Right. So we kind of simmer it all down. I said, what are we going to do this year? Well, then they kind of look at me dumbfounded. Okay. Like, I don't know. What are we going to do? I said, okay, if we're going to have, for example, we're going to be doing like the live stuff, like on stage, and other people are going to be doing the video portions of things like your YouTube channel. What would we do today in order to take a step forward in that category? They're like, oh, well, that would be easy. We would need to hire someone that has kind of our same skill set to be the demonstrator on YouTube. And we'd probably have to hire someone to film it and edit it and make it look professional. Like, okay. So now what are we going to like? So to this week, what can we do from that piece of information? So like, well, we actually already have talked to someone who's really good at editing videos. All right, so what you have, like, is it woo woo? No, but you've got to really force yourself to think about what you want, which is hard.
Well,
Which is
it's
really
interesting because it's
hard.
in the title. I'm just looking at it here. It says like the entrepreneur, she thinks big, right? It's not about
Yep.
she thinks in incremental improvements.
No,
Right?
no, she does
And then
not.
you were saying like move past the messy middle into the extraordinary. So it's like and it's funny because that magic wand thing is a good coaching question, but it's so true because it kind of is eliminating the like, if you have the same constraints that you have today,
Yes,
if you have the
it's
same
all very
knowledge you have
logical.
today, right?
Logical.
It's like if I'm thinking from today, I'm just like, oh well, maybe I can improve by 10%, right? Or I
Well,
can
yes,
improve.
that's where they started to do like their math.
Yeah,
Like what?
but you're like, no, like what? And I think the difference in thinking there is if I'm thinking like, how can I improve 10% or 20%, or even if I said 30%, right?
Right.
It's still an incremental thinking. And it's kind of like, how can I do more of the same versus what you're saying is like, step into this future you that is not thinking of like from where you are right now
No.
and look at what you want, which is going to pull you forward,
Yep.
right? Versus just like moving away from where you are right now.
Correct.
That's really
Yeah. So
cool.
it's like you have to. I mean, I love the coaching question. Like, what are you moving towards? But this is even beyond that. Like, it's not just moving towards something. It's like, where's the destination? Like, where's your GPS? So if you think about a GPS, if you put in like the GPS is super helpful. I mean, what do we do without it? But you have to put in your final destination, or else it doesn't know how
Right.
to help you. And if you take a wrong turn, it always recalculates,
That's true. That's true.
right?
It's so
It
funny
always
because my
recalculates.
husband used to always ignore it when it would recalculate. And I'm like,
Yes,
just listen to the GPS. It
yes.
can
And
tell that there's an accident or
right. The GPS does not like it does give you step by step, but only if it knows where its final destination is.
yeah.
And it define the step by step that it breaks down for you from, when you're in your current location, those step by steps can change along the way, right?
Right.
So it's kind of like the same sort of it doesn't decide the next step like, it doesn't know all the next steps.
Right.
It's
No, and I like what you're saying there is like it's not, you don't have to make this ginormous step
no,
today because you have this big vision in the future, right? Like
right.
the steps that you just said about the video and everything, that's not a huge scary thing that you're saying you have to do today.
No.
You're just moving into like these are actions from the future you. So let
Mhm.
me ask you this. There's a really good part of the book. So you guys have to get the book. She has the pretty version. I have the
Stacy has the
this is the original from our
original.
mastermind retreat. We
Yes,
printed this was the first printed copy, so it was so
but now
exciting.
we have this a
Yes.
couple months
So
later.
um one of the things that you talk about, and I think this is really interesting, is going from interest to commitment.
Uh-huh.
Right. And I think
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, we can be stuck in the me, myself, and I, right? Like,
Yep.
like when I fill out somebody's like, well, what's stopping you in your business? It's always me, myself, and I, right?
Mhm.
Because the buck stops
Mhm.
here. But it's also, as an entrepreneur, we can have lots of things that get us excited. How do we
Mhm.
move from like interest to commitment? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, this is a great, this is really some like an aha for some people. Um, I think way back when you said, "How did I get into this?" So, it where I got into it is sometimes we really realized that these people weren't committed. When I started coaching them, they were just interested. It was
Mm,
like all gonna be, rainbows and unicorns, but it wasn't, right? So, a lot of times we're interested in doing something, but we're not committed. And this can show up in your personal life. Like you could be really interested in walking 10,000 steps a day, but you're not committed. And then you ask yourself, why am I just not doing this? Like, what's wrong with me? I mean, I just have to put it on my calendar. But if you're not honoring your calendar, then you're only interested, you're not committed. Okay, so that's kind of like a personal example. And I think we could think of 100 things in our lives that we're interested in, but maybe not committed
well, and
to.
there's always reasons that are if we're not committed, right? Like it's
Right.
raining, it's cold, it's
Yes.
my knee
So-
kind of hurts, I'm
Something got in
busy.
the way. I had to do an unexpected whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Even if you had to do the unexpected and you got pulled away to go pick up some kid from school, you could still get 10,000 steps in your house, going up and down your stairs or,
I've
around the
done that
outside.
before.
Right. Right. So it's not like if you're committed, you're going to figure it out. Okay. And in your business, if you're committed to growth or if you're committed to being more of a visionary, not like the complaint department, the customer service, the sales, the marketing, all the departments. And if you're committed to it, you're gonna get curious and figure out a way. So the messy middle, okay, the messy middle does not include the feelings of curiosity or excitement or determination. They were in the beginning, but then you kind of got to the messy middle where everything is frustrating and it gets heavier and it feels like you're carrying this burden around. And then once you move past the messy middle or through it, in order to move through it, you have to access the commitment, the discipline. But most importantly, I think the curiosity like, how can I make this happen? How can I
Right.
stay committed? You're
Yeah.
just sort of like interested, but not doing anything sometimes in the messy middle, too.
It's interesting because you've seen this in the mastermind of like when people come, right, to the mastermind, they always show up or to a coaching call, they come in that messy middle a lot of times,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
They start the coaching, and they're like, "Oh, this is the exciting future that I want."
Yeah.
And then they show up to the coaching calls and they're like in the messy middle. And then as soon as you ask them some of those curiosity questions, the coaching, then they shift into resourcefulness
Yes.
and you can actually hear it and see it on the calls when you're on
Yes.
Zoom. Like people will be like, "Oh, this," rah, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, okay, like yeah, I could do
I can
like
do that.
they could do that." So I like the fact that they just really. How do you get your clients when they're not on the coaching calls or not on the mastermind? Like what are some ways that you help them be curious in between when they don't have somebody else to help them?
So, I teach a tool called the model. So, and it really helps you figure out how to solve any problem, or it helps you figure out why what's happening is happening. Why am I stuck here? What's going on? And it usually has to do with this feeling of overwhelm,
Mm.
right? So I teach them how to, like, and they can do this on their own, pull apart what's going on, pull apart what the facts are, pull apart what they're thinking, and then how that's making them feel, and really assess, like, their action or inaction, which oftentimes it's no action, or reaction that they're having. And then ultimately, then how is that showing up in the world? And how it's showing up in the world is always evidence of their thought. So I give them a framework that they can use, like, on their own, to sort of figure this stuff out.
That's
And it's really helpful. And I hear them catching themselves. I really should just put this in the model, shouldn't I? I'm like, yep, you should. Let's see what happens.
no,
Let's
and
see.
I think that's a big part of it, is starting to catch yourself, right?
Yes.
And
Yes. Because
otherwise you can go down that path and you're stuck in it. You're
yes,
mired in the quagmire of your thoughts and I
you
like
gotta
what
kind
you
of,
said at the
like,
beginning of, like,
eavesdrop in on your brain.
that
Eavesdrop
you
on your
just don't
brain.
want to feel that feeling, which is like
You
that
just
was a
don't.
big aha, right? Of, like, not
Yeah.
wanting to feel that feeling, but
Yep.
most of the times it's not a tiger outside the door. So
No. No. So
it's
here's a story too. So I'm working with this person for actually up to a year. Okay. And she's someone who, she describes herself as this character in the Police Academy movie from, like, 1980, who's in the background that's like, Mimi, I'm here. That's like some little police officer. I forget her name. Anyway, there's a character in the movie who's like a little squeaky voice. Hi. Like, she doesn't want to be the center of attention. Okay. Which I think has kind of gotten in her way of growing her business. Okay, because she's afraid almost to put herself out there, especially in circles of people she already knows. Okay. So she said to me the other day, well, I think I'm going to invest in story branding. I think I'm going to do their whole certification. And I was like, okay, because I'm all in on story branding. I think that Donald Miller, if you're not familiar with it,
yep.
like, it's great. Like, yes, I love it. But I want to know, why are you doing it? Because it's like a $10,000 investment. Why are you doing it? She's like, well, what's going to happen is that once I become story brand certified, then I'm going to be in their directory of certified story brand people. And that's a way that people will find me and, want to work with me. I was like, okay, that totally could happen. It's a possibility. But I don't think it's the magic bullet to growing your business. I don't think that's the magic bullet. I think you're using that almost as like an excuse to not speak up for yourself, to not put yourself out there. You're using that as another, like, kind of going down another path.
Right. Like, and I think it's when you mentioned this in the book, when I do this or when I get this, then I will blank.
Right. Well,
Right.
that was
That's
exactly it. When
part
I become
in the book.
story brand certified,
Yeah.
then all of a sudden
The
my business
clients
will
will
blossom.
magically
Right.
appear.
They'll magically appear.
Abracadabra.
Right. And I was like, hey, is that really, like, do you really, really, really think that's going to happen? I mean, you have access to millions of directories, I'm sure, of people with other skills. Are you going in there to look for them?
Yeah. No, and it's interesting because I think it's challenging, and it's also sad because I think, there's a lot of certifications online that people use as a crutch, right?
Yeah.
As a like, oh, this is going to help me do that, versus like for example, I know that there's some certifications that actually give you a skill set which are going
Yeah.
to help you serve your clients better, right? Like,
Yes.
they're
Yes.
designed in a way to actually help you get better results, to help you do something with it, versus just like, oh, this is going to magically solve all of my problems. So I always tell people, like, before you go to get the certification, like, it's not the Band-Aid or magic.
Right. Like,
Bullet.
she's gonna gain knowledge in there that she totally can use. Like, yes, like, I think it's great knowledge, but I don't think that knowledge, you're gonna use the knowledge, but it's not gonna grow the business
Right. And is that
in the way she's thinking.
$10,000 worth it to you then?
Yeah.
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 Because a lot of times they're making the decision based on the economic result that they think they're
Correct.
going to get versus just the transformation that they
I mean,
would
I
get.
got certified in a couple things last year, and I'm in the directories. I don't think anything, I mean, the directories didn't do anything. Now they've
No, and
given
I
you
remember
skill
us
sets
having
that
that
have,
conversation in the coaching
yeah,
when you were going to do them, and I said, like, this is not like a big lead source, but I think if this is something that you feel will help your clients get better
right.
results, and I think you've
Then,
seen that
yes,
it's really helped your clients because they had these things and they could pull these other things in that help them get results faster, then it
right,
was worth it.
right.
Right. And so I can see where that would be helpful. So let me ask you this. So this has been really, really good. I would highly, highly recommend you go out and buy the book today, the real book, not the pre-printed version. But and also, I mean, this is something that I highly suggest. Like, I'm going to be buying them for Christmas gifts as well, because I think that this is something, one of my favorite books was The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz, right? But that was written like 8 million years ago by some old white dude, right? And he
Yes,
doesn't have any of that, like, oh, what about being a woman in business, right? What about
right.
being a woman in business and dealing with all of these other things that we have to deal with? So I would really highly suggest, if you're a woman in business, to grab this book, to grab it for other people that like I'm going to be buying it for my college student and daughters, because I think it's really good to have it from a woman's perspective, to deal with like the fears that we have, the things that are going on in our head, and some of the external factors that keep us from thinking big, that you're like, you know what, I need to do this on the inside before I can do it on the outside.
Yes,
So
yes, like your
um,
external communication and your internal
yeah, so where
communication.
can people get the book? And I know you have some bonuses for people
I
that are like,
do.
let's do it now, that
Let's
they
do
can
it.
get some of these
The
resources that
action
will help them get,
takers.
yeah, help them get better
Um,
results.
so I think the easiest place is to go to shethinksbigthebook.com, and you're going to get the link to Amazon. And you're
Awesome.
also going to have access to, if you're listening to this right now, some bonuses that are happening in the next few weeks. One's an insider session where I'm really going to talk about how do you take what you've learned inside the book and then start to implement it, start to do something with it. Like, where can you start? What are the secrets of the people that actually get results and change what's going on, make a difference, go where they want to go? What are their secrets? What do they know that you might not know as just being a reader? So you want to get your free ticket for that with your book purchase. Also, I did, if you'd like an autographed book, even I'm not going to mail you an autographed book, but I will mail you a book plate to stick inside your book with a little
Awesome.
personal message, which is kind of fun, snail mail style. So you can get that as a bonus. And I think then just start listening to the podcast, my podcast, Time to Level Up. You'll kind of get more of that information there. And in the next month, in October, I am going to be offering kind of a very special coaching package for people who want to take action, like who don't want to sit on the sidelines, who are ready to take some action and start moving towards or listening to, which I think is better, their future selves.
Yeah, I love that. I think, and I'm going to have you sign mine at the mastermind retreat. So
Okay.
like a real,
Okay. Like a
I
real.
can't wait. Um, but I think this is important because I've seen how you've created this book. So, um, one of the things was like you wanted this to be actionable, right? Because there's
Yes.
enough of what's called shelf help, right? Like
Yes.
self-help books that just kind of, oh, you feel a little good for a little bit. You might take some action, but you're not going to get the long-term sustainable results. So when Andrea wrote this, she was extremely, there's like questions in here, there's things like every chapter has like an action plan. Oh, I can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it has an action plan, so you can actually read it and then be like, okay, well, how can I do this in my business? So I think that's really important that you wrote this as an actionable book, not just like a nice shelf help make you feel
Correct.
better kind of
There's
book.
a whole free, there's like a whole bunch, probably too many free downloads in the toolkit that goes with the book too, um, that are going to help you kind of, again, ask you the right questions. I think one of the things I learned way back in the day, my very, very, very first coach gave me a book to read. And she said, listen, I want you to read this book, but I want you to actually do the question. Like, I want you to embrace those questions. I want you to write it down with a pen, your answers to these questions. And I think I learned through that experience that it made that whole coaching experience, and that I grew tremendously just by taking the time to answer the questions with a pen and paper. So that's why it was important for me too to have this toolkit and to put those reflection questions at the end of each chapter to help people do something with the knowledge that they're gaining.
Right, because I think when you're reading it, it's kind of about the examples you give, the stories
Yep.
you give, the tools you give, but when you actually do the exercises, then you're integrating it and
Yes.
merging it with your own experience, your own thoughts, then to put into action. So
Yeah.
And what's the link again? Drop the link again.
SheThinksBigTheBook.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. And I'm so excited I get to do my happy dance with you to see this come to fruition.
Woohoo!
And out in the world. And, I'm all about high achieving entrepreneurs actually creating these ripples in the world. Right. And like Andrea and I were talking, and I'm like, you can't even know the ripple effect that is going to happen for this book of like somebody's reading it on an airplane and they see somebody next to them crying or whatever. And they're like, here, you read this book. We don't know what those ripples are. So I'm just envisioning with you, like all of these women thinking big and all the massive difference that can have on the world. So
ripples on the lake.
Yes. Yes. So
Thank
everybody remember, don't just learn, implement, and go grab the book.
Thank you.